Clarification for all. August 29, 2019 by Anna von Reitz. The United States of America was formed on September 9, 1776. The Confederacy of States was formed March 1, 1781. The United States of America, therefore, as opposed to the United States of America, was indeed formed almost 5 years earlier. September 1776, 1777, 1778, 1779, 1780, plus 3 months into 1781 equals, if you want to be picky, 4 years and 3 months, affecting 6 calendar years 1776 to 1781. Am I getting the point through to all and everyone? The Federation is older than the Confederation by years, and not only that, the Federation is composed of independent sovereign states, not business entities called states of states. Am I making myself perfectly clear? Is everyone now understanding what is going on here? We are declaring our birthright political status and casting off any presumption that we volunteered to adopt any foreign citizenship at all. We are assembling our actual independent and sovereign states, not a business organization set up to sell us services. Does everyone get that through their heads now? As such, Mr. Trump, the Joint Chiefs and every man jack in the British territorial United States of America is required by international treaty, international trust, and international commercial service contract to remove these municipal and administrative courts from our soil, restrict the municipal government to its constitutionally declared limit of the 10 miles square granted to them, collapse the 500 mini-municipal districts which these treasonous corporations have attempted to overlay upon our land and soil, seize the offshore tax trusts formed in our names and the related CUSIP bonds, and return all our assets including our land titles to us. Don't you all get it yet? Our own dear military has at the highest levels, knowingly or unknowingly, followed orders under the false presumption that the foreign Roman civil government, set up merely to run the business of the Washington, D.C. municipality, was somehow magically converted into the civilian government of this country in our purported absence. The two for-hire service providers were running amok, securing credit under false pretenses in our names and using our assets as collateral, purportedly backing our debts, while in fact, they were spending our money and credit however they wished, with no consequences for them, until we stood up and said, WTH? This is the same situation as a credit card hacker stealing your identity, accessing your credit, and going on a spending spree. Does everyone see that? Because the British territorial government was allowed to exercise some of the delegated powers belonging to the United States of America, it was also allowed to conduct business under a variation of our name, the United States of America. Many people were naturally confused and did not notice nor understand the difference between the United States of America and the United States of America. This would be like John Reynolds Jackson being mistaken for John R. Jackson, or any other such similar names deceit. This is the game these corporations have been playing for 150 years, and it is nothing but the most facile kind of con game. It's time to end it. Now. Agents of the British territorial entity exercising some of our delegated powers and doing business under our name as the United States of America have been snatching American babies and trafficking them into their foreign territorial jurisdiction for decades, deliberately misidentifying them as British territorial dependents and cashiering their good names and assets for use backing the debts of the British Crown Corporation. Wake up. The British monarchs who are obligated to act as our trustees in this venue have allowed this to go on in gross breach of trust. The popes have similarly allowed this in gross breach of trust. The Lord Mayor of London has conducted commercial war against treaty allies and innocent internationally protected persons and is an international criminal of the highest order. Wake up. Wake up. Wake up. We are not chattel. We are not here to be picked apart by the creditors of pirates who have been grossly and without merit pretending to represent us. So now we are engaged in unraveling this criminal enterprise and calling down the Pope, the Queen, and the Lord Mayor, and the United Nations, for all the world to see, and we are flatly demanding the return of our purloined property and actual assets to us, not to them, acting as our representatives. Obviously, they are not trustworthy. Period. They have breached their trust with the American states and people, and the only sane option is to return it all whence it came, to our lawful and actual government, which is now assembling under the organizational heading of the American States Assembly. The states have been called to assemble and conduct business by the United States of America, formed September 9, 1776, and by the hereditary head of state under whose great seals the international ship of state sails. This is right and proper and verifiable and cannot be contested or overturned. There is no record nor verifiable provenance of any organization operating as the United States of America 1781 related to this country at all. It appears to be an attempt to latch onto the long-defunct Confederacy of Business Organizations DBA States of America, which was formed March 1, 1781, by a group of religious fanatics also operating as the Reign of Heaven Society. The noxious history and nature and intentions of that organization calling itself the Reign of Heaven Society began when it plagiarized the work of Frank O'Collins, twisted it, and represented it as the basis of this elitist religious sect. Well, we've all had enough of that, haven't we? Thus far the perpetrators behind all this gross mismanagement and criminal neglect have tried to maintain control of our assets by handing them to third-party philanthropists, Wolfgang Struck, Kim Goguen, Karen Hughes, etc., and ginned up various stories as to how and why these persons suddenly control our assets and have any right to dispose of them. The simple truth is that the banks stole the assets, the U.S. military stole them back, and now nobody knows how to both control their release, which is necessary in terms of flooding the markets and collapsing everything, and yet, return them to the actual lawful owners. Another part of the problem is that lawful assets can only belong to lawful persons, and none of those responsible are acting in the capacity of lawful persons. They are all acting as legal persons, and so was Prince Philip when he received all the purloined life force value annuities owed to Americans and Canadians. They appoint the presumed to be philanthropist that they control and pretend that this person has some natural inherited claim to sit in this position, and it is all just an infantile smokescreen for what has actually gone on here. Their attempts to appoint a third-party philanthropist to handle the distribution hasn't sold, so they have tried other means. They've tried to justify the dead baby scam. Nobody is buying that, either. They have fronted a GCR, but that won't work for the reasons I have already outlined. Doing it admits that they can do it, and that they are criminals. Exit that. They've tried a new round of the old Justinian deception via introducing parse syntax as the new legalese. That isn't working, either. So now they are back to the ye old Scottish corporation trick of trying to use a similarly and deceitfully named corporation, in the present situation, a private membership association calling itself the United States of America 1781, to snare unwary people into more undisclosed contracts created under conditions of deliberate constructive fraud with intent to deceive. We are calling them out on all of it. What needs to happen is for the Pope to get rid of the Freemasons acting as worshipful Grand Masters in the old pontifical system, which is supposed to be gone and isn't, who are still dictating to elected territorial governors. He also needs to engineer the removal of Mike Pence from the office of Vice President. Unfortunately, Vice President has come to mean the President in charge of Vice, as in Vice Squad. You have to give them credit for having a sardonic sense of humor, but we don't need any vice here, much less a CEO in charge of vice-related business enterprises, thank you. Now, with that in mind, take a close look at who has been serving the pontifical vice apparatus in your country. Mike Pence, Creepy Joe, all the way back to LBJ, who, yes, was largely responsible for the murder of President Kennedy. Take a bow, if you knew that back in 1963. Next, look at all the lieutenant governors. These vermin have ruled from behind the throne, the better to have someone else to blame. Has it ever made sense to you that we have all these obviously quasi-military offices in plain view? Lieutenant governor? What to hell is a lieutenant governor, or a tax commissioner, or even worse, an attorney general? Where are their offices defined in any legitimate original constitution? Nowhere. None. These vermin have no authority related to us. These offices have existed and continue to exist merely as a result of public ignorance and failure to monitor our service providers. Francis also needs to close down the municipal courts throughout this country, voluntarily and peacefully. If he fails to take these actions, he is obviously not acting in good faith. Meantime, the Queen needs to come forward and exercise our delegated power, for us, in fact, to restructure the operations of the U.S. Navy to do its job for us instead of being engaged in worldwide crime syndicate activities benefiting the British Crown. No more using it to transport drugs all around the Pacific Rim and Mediterranean and then passing their operations bills on to us. No more targeting American soil and American people as domestic targets for geoengineering and scalar tech weapons, either. She also needs to arrest the Lord Mayor and oust his peculiar religion from British shores, if she has the sense of a dung beetle and wishes to retain any credibility for the limited monarchy she is responsible for. The Holy See is already committed in public to prosecution of the Temple of Baal and its promoters, even though the Holy See privately deals extensively with the pirates and fraud artists running these so-called secular programs. The consequences of overtly supporting them against the demands of our lawful government would further endanger the Church and its credibility. All the rats are now in the same basic position they were in 1300. Their choices are the same now as then. Prosecute the Satan worshippers or be prosecuted themselves. So the Satan-worshipping vermin have proposed to leave America and set up their new base of operations in China, where they have long controlled the drug trade, but the Chinese, Indian, and Afghani governments that have been enslaved to the British organized triangle trade, can see the situation now and have other ideas. To put it very bluntly, the time has come for actual reform and honest government throughout the world. All governments are supposed to be functioning as non-profit service organizations monitored closely by the people they serve. When you think about it, such a goal is stupidly simple to achieve once people understand what the goal is, what their role as oversight monitors requires, are given a means to enforce their oversight, and assuming that they are motivated to do their part. If the prospect of being slaves to drug and sex-crazed Satan worshippers isn't motivation enough to wake up and get moving, I don't know what is. And that is literally what is going on and what is at stake here. Wake up. Stop nitpicking and dawdling. Get on your feet. Declare your proper political status. Record it. Join your state assembly, or if your state is one of the few that still does not have an official state assembly, form one now. There is one legitimate government left standing in the international jurisdiction, one and only one that actually does represent the people of this country. The name of that organization is the United States of America. It was formed September 9, 1776. The United States of America operates and sails its vessels in international jurisdiction under the auspices of the Norman kings of England and France, and in particular, under the Great Seals of William Belcher, an American in fact, also known as the Belshare, one of the Bells kings of Gaul, as well as being a sovereign in his own right in England by lawful heritage established and settled in 1087 AD. William Belcher's kinsman, the Lafayette, came to his aid in 1776. And the Bells and Pells will still answer against the Hellas kings, if need be. The Bells and Pells of this generation stand behind teaching the people to self-govern and to honor the true King of Heaven, our Creator, who lives in the hearts of all mankind forever. Any other presumption must be disallowed.